Thank you. You see, I never actually studied in Choice, but a lot of my friends and family did. So I've been to the JT Pack quite a few times, but I've always been in the audience. And suddenly standing here with all of you looking back at me expectantly, the stage definitely feels a lot bigger than it always looked from down there. It's not that I'm scared of public speaking or anything. It's just that as easy as it is for me to speak about my personal mental health in Delhi or Dubai or Spain, where I have all the comforts of knowing that no one in the audience really knows who I am, doing it here is terrifying. I mean, I recognize so many more faces in this audience than I thought I would. And I mean, this is home, this is where I'm from, this is family. So when I was invited to speak, I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about. I mean, I knew I was expected to say something related to mental health, but I just kept thinking, what could I possibly have to add to that conversation in 2019 that hasn't already been said already? It took a while, but then I thought about what the hardest part about my personal mental health journey has been. Everybody else. So today, I want to talk about you, but first let's talk about me. So sometime in early 2014, I forgot how to breathe. Like, of course I was still breathing, but I never got the satisfaction of having taken a breath. So I kept gasping for air a lot. Now, my mother, who had just read Fault in Our Stars recently, in which the protagonist has lung cancer, was convinced I'm suffering from the same thing. So she took me to the hospital, and my uncle, who's my doctor because I'm Indian, they ran a bunch of blood tests and took a chest x-ray and everything, and he confirmed there was definitely nothing wrong with my lungs. But at the same time, he suggested that I might have anxiety. Now, I knew straight off the bat that he was right. He was just confirming what all my random midnight Google searches had already suggested. But instead of building off what he said, telling them both how I felt or how I've been feeling, and getting the help I needed, I just laughed in his face. I said, anxiety, insecure, like, please, how could someone like me ever be anxious? I'm carefree and happy-go-lucky and just cheerful and fun-loving. Anxiety just didn't fit in that picture that I curated for myself. And I wasn't ready to let my mom or my uncle or anybody else for that matter think any differently. And anxiety also, to 13-year-old Mather at least, just sounded so lame. Like, I'm a confident person, or at least that's what everyone around me thought at the time. Now, I couldn't have them thinking that I could ever be nervous or worried or bothered by anything at all. So I kept it to myself. Over the year, my anxiety got a lot worse. And like, my family was angry at me because I was sleeping in all the time. My teachers were angry because I started skipping school even more than I already did. And my friends were getting frustrated because I'd keep canceling plans last minute. It took over a year for me to recognize the severity of the condition I was in and to put my ego aside and really reach out for help. When I first told my mother that I think I might have depression, she just brushed it off. But it's not because she's insensitive or anything, just the personality that I had and the person I was at the time, anybody would have had the same reaction. Like, the person I was, nobody would have ever thought was dealing with anything like that. So when that happened, I approached my then best friend, who told me that if I was feeling depressed, it's because I'm ungrateful. That, like, despite having everything that I was gifted with, that I was still feeling that way, it's me letting my own entitlement getting the better of myself. When I told a teacher that the reason I've been skipping school so often is because I felt mentally unfit, she told me that it's unfair that I'm using other people's real struggles as an excuse to, like, justify my own laziness. Throughout the year, I had tried all the generic methods to improve mental health. I worked out, I journaled, I tried fixing my sleep cycle. That didn't really work out. I replaced my toxic friends with positive ones. I cycled around beautiful places. None of that really worked. And finally, I reached out to other people, hoping for a gateway into some professional attention. And instead, nobody took me seriously. So at this point, I just decided, maybe I don't want to get better. I just gave up on the idea of ever feeling better than I did at the time. I'm not sure what would have happened if I had left it at that. But fortunately for me, my dad had come home one day and he shared with me that he, a few years ago, had to consult a psychiatrist because due to situational depression triggered by family business trauma, and he had to be taking medication, and he needed medication to take himself out of the situation that he was in. That was the first real opportunity I had to open up to somebody about what I've been going through. And as soon as I did, my dad asked me if I wanted to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. The amount of relief I felt at that moment is incomparable. I didn't know if things were going to get better if I were to see one, but I knew that at that time, someone believed what I was saying, and they were willing to get me help. Suddenly, I didn't feel like every millennial Gen Z teenager who's just throwing a tantrum because she's mentally just unprepared for the real world. I really felt like a human being with a real, genuine illness that deserved to be treated and get real attention and treatment. At that time, that was all I wanted, and honestly, everything I needed. Seeking professional help, though, wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I hated the first psychiatrist I saw. The second one I saw told me she can't help me and that I need to see someone better qualified. And that person told me, as soon as I got comfortable with my third psychiatrist, I moved to Dubai. And just as, given that I'd just moved to a whole new city, a whole new school, and a social gathering, I just disregarded my mental health. I was getting better anyway. I was sure I'd be fine. But I disregarded my medication, and suddenly I ended up with the worst relapse I had at the time. This cycle just kept on repeating. I'd feel low, then I'd feel lower, I'd get help, I'd get prescribed medication, I'd feel better, then I'd forget the reason I'm feeling better is because I'm getting treatment, and then disregard it, and then the cycle repeats all over again. I started my freshman year of university last September, and it was honestly fantastic. I was studying a subject I love, I had incredible friends, 2 amazing roommates, and I got to see Real Madrid play every month, my favorite football club. Did we lose every game? Maybe. Was that a little depressing too? Yeah, kind of. But at the end of the day, I was doing what I loved in a place that I loved, and I was having a good time. At that point, January rolled around, and it had been 6 months since I had taken any sort of medication or seen any kind of professional. I had a relapse, and this time it was terrible. I couldn't get out of bed. I missed my first 4 weeks of second semester. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. I was averaging 3 hours of sleep every 4 days. The only food I was eating was when my roommates would come home and make me a bowl of Maggie or something like that. So that was my only sustenance. This relapse was different though. Every time it would be okay, yeah, oh no, I feel bad, let me go see somebody. This time I was really angry because, I was angry at myself because I knew no matter how many times I was running around in different stages screaming about fighting the stigma around mental health, I couldn't apply it to myself. I knew what I needed to do, but refused to get the treatment or continue taking that treatment consistently because 99% of the people I surrounded myself with didn't approve of that. Many people couldn't just understand that when your brain just can't produce the chemicals it needs to support you, it's fine to take supplements like medication, just like you take vitamin C or B or B12 or whatever. So now let's come back to you. Shame is a very powerful feeling. It makes people act a certain way, and restrains people from behaving in yet another way. Especially in societies as tight-knit as ours, every single one of your opinions and beliefs and ideas has a real tangible effect on the decisions and choices that people make. So it's all of our responsibilities to make sure that the ideas we're propagating, we're aware and informed about what we're actually telling people. There are two distinct moments where your response to someone suffering from mental illnesses can make a monumental difference in how they approach their recovery. The first is when one reaches out to you regarding how they feel. If somebody trusts you enough to open up about the stuff they've been going through, don't disregard them. Really try to understand what they're saying. If they tell you what they're going through today, I assure you they've probably been thinking about and building it up in their head for weeks in advance, trying to think about all the ways you're going to react. Don't let them feel like they knew the worst way you're going to react. Trust them to know their own emotions well enough to know what they're talking about and take them seriously. The second is when they're actually in the process of recovery or when they're actually coping. It's more than normal to be concerned about the people you care about, especially when they're going through something that you might not have personally. But unless you have legitimate reason to believe that they're putting themselves in harm's way, or if consulted, going against the advice of a medical professional, give them the freedom to figure their things out themselves. Because everybody copes and everybody goes through recovery in a different way. And what works for one person might not for the other. And that's completely okay. Sometimes a new hobby does the trick, but for some people, you need lifelong therapy. Either way, whatever their coping mechanism is, it's much easier to go through it with a happy and supportive support system around them. And I don't just mean their close, immediate circle, but society at large. The way us as Keralites or Indians or whatever decide to perceive what getting treatment from mental health means, that's going to affect the way people approach their recovery. And that's a big deal. It saves lives. So I wish I had a fairy tale ending to give you guys where I could tell you that after taking medication and therapy and dance and friends and parties and Real Madrid or whatever, that suddenly I'm all good and cured. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. I still get frequent panic attacks. To be honest, I got one 20 minutes ago and they had to reschedule my talk. I was supposed to be the last speaker, but I was too busy screaming in the closet somewhere. There are days I can't get out of bed. There are days I can't eat. There are days where I feel like everything is too much. And the only thing that helps me is going to the people I'm close to and knowing that my mom and my dad and my grandparents and my uncles and aunts and my friends and family are all here for me. And that every time I relapse, I'm one step closer to recovery. And that every time it gets worse, it always gets better. So that's something for you all to think about, I guess. But thank you.